When you order something online, do you care if it was picked by a person or a robot? Walmart, Target, and Albertsons are all guessing the answer is no. They've hired Symbotic, which is going public, to manage their warehouse with more than 40 robots. In today's video, we talk about their $5.5 billion valuation, the implication of taking more than $725 million of fresh capital, having SoftBank as a SPAC sponsor, and the bull and the bear case for this equity. Stay with us.
I'm Hannah, this is Aaron, and you're watching the Piper Rundown. We analyze business and culture to help you win. Today's rundown is presented by Rivers Agile. Rivers Agile merges strategy with engineering to purposefully craft software solutions. Make sure you stick around until later in the video, right before the bull and the bear case, so you can hear precisely how Rivers Agile can help you.
And you have to stick around to the very end to find out why Hannah is wearing the sunglasses. Symbotic is going public via a SPAC sponsored by SoftBank. They'll be valued at $5.5 billion and raise $725 million. The Wilmington, Massachusetts-based robotics firm was founded all the way back in 2005. And their system for robotic intake and retrieval for large warehouses is not only industry-defining, cutting-edge technology, but serves some of the biggest retailers on planet Earth. Walmart, Target, Albertsons, C&S wholesale grocers all have contracts with Symbotic to assist in automating and making their warehouses more efficient. To give you a sense of scale here, one system, the cost to be integrated into a warehouse is $50 million. Once implemented, the estimated savings for that warehouse is as much as $10 million. It is a complex setup of different robots, systems for retrieving packages extremely quickly, and removing humans from these systems. In addition to the hardware installation associated with making one of these systems possible, there's also an ongoing subscription service for the software that continues to execute these systems. The robots move around the space at around 25 miles per hour, and there is a long legacy of automation and other kind of manufacturing systems being applied to large commercial enterprises. To put it succinctly, this is right there at like the Mac Daddy highest level of enterprise sales. If you think about a singular unit being sold for $50 million and selling into a very, very limited pool of retailers that would not only have the budget, but be able to actually roll this out and see the efficiency gains. There's no local grocer that's going to be able to benefit from such a complex and robust system. Makes Symbotic a very interesting service provider, and once integrated, I mean, I cannot imagine what the lifetime value is for one of these services with it eventually being ripped out. There's estimations, but you can't really know that even 15 years into the life cycle of the business because of how much of the early days were about R&D and candidly about how many iterations and updates that they'll be able to make for a Walmart warehouse once it's actually implemented. Another important note here is part of the SPAC involves a PIPE. That's a very common vehicle for an additional private investment of capital beyond what is being held in the reverse merger vehicle that is actually taking the company public. Walmart is participating extensively in that, piping in $150 million, and after this transaction is completed, will own as much as 9% of the company.
Wow.
So this is, in many ways, we've seen this with Amazon acquiring different robotics companies or taking a stake in a company like Rivian that we talked about in a past video. The large, and Walmart is the biggest as it pertains to revenue, large players having some of the upside in the technology that's enabled them, not becoming beholden to one of these vendors that is providing a mission critical service, and getting to take part in the upside where if they owned all of Symbotic, which they certainly could buy it outright, $5 billion is really not that consequential for a company the magnitude of Walmart. But by only taking a small stake, they get to basically take a part of the upswing and the modernization that their competitors, Albertsons and Target, are doing. When it rolls out into their warehouses as well, they actually get a piece of that innovation that they're investing into, as opposed to if it was solely owned by Walmart, no one else would want to use it because they'd be worried about intellectual theft.
Totally. Aaron, do you have some numbies for us?
I do. Their system is already rolled out in 1,400 plus stores, 16 states, 8 provinces of Canada. One system hosts as many as 400 robots working with one another. They have 450 patent filings, 276 patents actually issued, $400 million worth of cumulative R&D spend already in the life cycle of the business. Revenue in 2020 was 92 million. In 2021, 211 million. And their estimate for 2022 is as much as 433 million. Now, we always need to be hesitant when it comes to SPAC revenue projections. But there's an interesting caveat here, actually 2 interesting caveats. There's a whole bunch of SPACs, particularly in the cutting edge technology, either robotics or EV space, that don't actually have much revenue to speak of whatsoever, and maybe they're kind of really being generous with the amount of business that they would foresee coming in the future. In their case, they claim to have $5 billion worth of contracts. So their actual constraint, it seems, from the presentations that they've given, is more about operations and the ability to have enough people who can implement, fine-tune, and execute these systems being put into these warehouses. It's not like we're, shipping apparel or something that is very easily replicable, very easily trainable on. There's a learning curve to actually getting this implemented, and so that seems to be more of the constraint from a number standpoint. They also, not so good, currently operate at about a 2% gross margin, probably also to the fact that this has not yet really been scaled out particularly effectively. And that is the other thing that, their SPAC deck goes from like 2% to like 20 to like, 30% gross margins here very quickly. That's another one that I'm mildly dubious of. And if they're able to execute on, would be representative of their bull case.
Very fascinating stuff. All right, let's move on to the comp section where we discuss comparable companies and competitors in the space.
So we've talked about another automation company here about a year ago, UiPath, which is now at an $11 billion valuation, has not performed particularly well since their IPO. They're more focused on software automation. So different software processes, different processes where people have their fingers on a keyboard, getting that automated to make people more efficient. This is much more representative of the physical world, but UiPath is good as it pertains to just appreciating the potential market opportunity to apply automation in areas where you want to make your labor more efficient or you just don't want to face a labor crunch. Ansys is a longer standing automation company. They have a $27 billion market cap. And not only do they have the automation side, but they also have the recurring revenue nature of a business like this. There's plenty of older warehouse technologies that they're more focused on selling the hardware. This is a kind of hardware as a service play where they implement this big robotic system. There's this big capital upfront investment to get all the robots and machinery in place, and then an ongoing subscription to continue to get access to that. Trimble, which only has a $17 billion market cap, less than Ansys, is more of that conventional hardware player as opposed to the recurring revenue software provider as well. And then Rivian is another example. We warned you that they'd be going down after their public offering. They're down to $36 billion market cap, down 69% from their highs. Very similar in that they have one of these blue chip customers that does lend a ton of credibility to the business, in their case Amazon, in Symbotic's case Walmart, but that is also potentially a point of risk if there were some falling out with that specific provider in the future. Then the optimism around the business generally would go down significantly.
All right, on to the meme factor, where Aaron and I discuss the memeability of a company on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 is negative memes, 3 is completely neutral, and 5 are all the positive dank memes. I really like Symbotic's name. I do. I think it makes sense for the industry that they're in, and there's some brand power behind that. And their track record is pretty solid. I think I'm going 3.8.
I struggled with this one because I think that there's one frame of reference where it's like the robots are taking our jobs, and that makes me nervous. It's hard for me to get excited about it. But then you have this other thing, and it's way more Amazon, and I think that that's also partially like a PR thing against Amazon. But where it's like, we've got these workers who can't even sit down. They're running from like location to location. They're peeing in bottles because it's like such a brutal work environment to be in one of these warehouses, not to mention the danger. Like warehouse accidents are non-trivial as it pertains to workers' comp claims and other issues like that. So in my mind, this should be like a 4.2, where the ability to remove humans from jobs that aren't particularly desirable, that are risky from a health standpoint, and probably, once implemented, make all your goods even less expensive. Walmart is known for being that low-cost provider. Their capacity to gain efficiencies from these systems and pass that on to the end consumer is also highly optimistic. But then I get drawn back into, this is like the epitome of robots taking humans' jobs. That makes a lot of people nervous and uncomfortable about what the future holds. So I'm gonna land on 3.8. But like I wanted to be at a 4.2 because I do really think that there's real revenue here, there's real like effective systems in place, and seems like one of those instances where candidly, like the multiples on revenue are insane. A $5.5 billion valuation for a company doing less than $250 million is like, don't do public math, 5. That's a more than 20x multiple on revenue, which speaks to the hype around this. I'm going back to 4.2. 4.2, final, lock it.
Is that your final answer?
I don't think that's allowed here on the rundown.
Well, I make the rules when I'm the one not wearing sunglasses.
I don't think that's written anywhere, but all right, before we move on to the bull and the bear case, hey, look at me. Let's hear from our sponsor, Rivers Agile, one final time.
Because you have all these different systems interconnected, bringing a new system in and then interconnecting that it's tough because you're working with multiple different companies. These packages, especially the new ones, may not interoperate cleanly with some of the other older systems, right? And so you've got to be able to bring those together and really harmonize the whole system.
Smoosh the like button, not a laughing matter. And now let's hear about the bull and the bear case.
The bull case comes down to the labor crunch that's being faced all around not only the United States, but in a bunch of different markets where people cannot find folks to show up for the least desirable jobs. And as these companies try to evaluate their risk vectors in the future, in one case it's supply chains, in one case it is the labor crunch, and the escalating costs of that. We're in Pennsylvania, where it's certainly not the same cost of living as some of the major metros like New York or San Francisco or something. But we're seeing signs where McDonald's is offering $23 an hour for someone to work there, which is just exponentially more than anything I can remember, at least in recent memory. In that environment, the corporations are highly incentivized to find places where automation can be applied out of the necessity of rising costs, but out of the necessity of jobs to be done. Back in the pandemic, the Amazon executives weren't saying like, we have some issue with demand. Our issue is getting it to people. We need enough people picking it off the shelf, getting the stuff where it needs to be. The ability to have your warehouse be working 24/7, 365 is really consequential for these retailers. And so that, I can't fathom that going away, as people just want their stuff sooner and sooner, easier and easier, quicker and quicker. And I don't see some tide turning in which all of a sudden people are going to be like, man, I really want to be in a warehouse. So that to me is the bull case. In conjunction with e-commerce growth, I think that just all makes a ton of sense. The bear case just really comes down to a very high enterprise value to revenue ratio. That's something we always point to on this show. It's always one of those canaries in the coal mine, so to speak, of a potential correction when it actually hits the public market. And it's not that it couldn't grow into that. If they have $5 billion in contracts, then heck yeah, $5.5 billion market cap is going to seem completely reasonable, but they have to execute on that. And so to me, the short term bear scenario is basically the likelihood that there would be some sort of correction revenue relative to enterprise value. But long term, this is not like they have one nice customer like Rivian did. We were kind of skeptical of Rivian. They have 4 of the world's largest retailers as customers right now in the present.
Bonkers. Pretty crazy. All right, that's a rundown. Thank you for watching to the end. If you have watched to the end, please hit subscribe. You know you want to. And on our Corebridge IPO video, Paulo Rica said, "Thanks, Peralta. That was very informative."
Peralta! Right, sorry. What do you want?
Well, I'm gonna let you guess why I'm wearing the sunglasses today. Let's see. Number 1, I am ill and fatigued. Number 2, someone punched me. Got into a tussle last night, and it wasn't pretty. And number 3, I'm just violently hungover. I'll let you decide. Thanks for watching.